Anton, this is the Global Digest think tank group. You are our guest today. Where are you right now? And what are you doing? What's your
So
background?
I'm currently. So first of all, thank you, John, for inviting me to your webcast. It's really an honor and opportunity to share my ideas and my thoughts. Yeah, you're right. I'm an expert in the field of the Arctic development. I'm doing it for quite a time. So currently, I'm based in St. Petersburg, in Russia, so where I work. And St. Petersburg, it's maybe not the most Arctic city, not the most northernmost city in Russia, but still it has the great potential to be like the gate to the Arctic for Russian business, Russian academia, because St. Petersburg is one of the scientific centers of Russia and one of the academic centers of Russia, and I guess it has all the necessary expertise to be like the gateway to the Arctic. The St. Petersburg started as a shipbuilding facility, actually. So Peter the Great, the Russian emperor, he wanted to get Russia into the Baltic, and that's why he needed a port in the Baltic Sea. So, and that's why the St. Petersburg was built. And of course, the shipbuilding industry is like the core industry in St. Petersburg. But apart from that, a lot of machinery, building facilities are here, and also energy machinery is also produced here in St. Petersburg. But I think that now it's more or less the scientific center. Despite all the industrial opportunities, I guess now it's like the IT center, science center, like the academic science. I mean, not just the science that could be used practically right now, right here, but also like some more fundamental things like astrophysics, nuclear physics, and so on and so forth. It's all here in St. Petersburg.
Last time I talked with one of Norwegian journalists, and we discussed about Arctic issues. I think there is an Arctic Council or Arctic agreement among different countries in that area. And Norway is very close country in Arctic region, and of course Canada and Russia, such different country involved there. So what is Arctic Council or what is Arctic
Yes, of course.
agreement?
Yes, of course.
What
Yes.
kind of agreement you are doing?
Yes. So Arctic Council, it's an organization that was formed in the 90s. It all started from Mikhail Gorbachev's article in Pravda that was published in, let me say, 1989, where he called, Gorbachev was the first and the only president of the USSR, and later the USSR was crushed and rebuilt into Russian Federation. But still, Gorbachev published an article where he suggested that Arctic should be the territory of peace and peaceful cooperation, because earlier it was the area of confrontation, of course, because Arctic is the shortest route between the USSR, was the shortest route between USSR and USA. So, in case of the global war, it could be used as a theater of military actions. But Gorbachev suggested that we need to move into peaceful cooperation in this region. And later, this initiative was transformed into the Arctic Council idea, and it was initially formed as an organization that was tied to ecological things, some sustainable development, and all these things. It was like the place for or the platform for dialogue about, eco safety, nature safety in the Arctic. But actually, this platform was also used for, for cooperation and dialogue when uh, dialogue elsewhere was like unavailable. Like, for example, when there was some troubles between Russia and the Western countries. So still, the Arctic Council played its role. It was apolitical thing, apolitical entity, and it helped with this dialogue thing. But after 2022, so the Arctic Council actually um, it was not dismissed, of course. It continued its operation, but like the Russian, Russia was the head of the Arctic Council at that moment, and all Russian initiatives were like um, how to say, how to put it mildly, were ignored, and actually the work in the Arctic Council was frozen for quite a time. Later, for example, now we see that some technical work, some expert groups continue renew their work, but usually it's like via the internet cooperation, via the internet dialogues, not the living meetings. And I think that the Arctic Council, it's just my idea that it should be reformed actually, because nowadays so the first serious stress test for the Arctic Council, and it proved that um, it couldn't operate in such conditions. For example, we have the similar organization, the Antarctic Treaty, and as you may be aware, that the countries that are in the Antarctic Treaty, they went into open war, like United Kingdom and Argentina, over the Falkland Islands. So they and still the Antarctic Treaty was working, but the Arctic Council, the Arctic Council is much more fragile. It's quite a surprise, but the Antarctic Treaty was a much fragile organization. Yes, so
Right.
that's the Antarctic. That's what's the Arctic Council. So the Arctic Council consists of the Arctic countries, like Norway. You say Norway, Russia, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Canada, United States, and also there are a number of the countries that are not the Arctic countries, like Singapore
Uh-huh.
or China or India, but they have the observer status. So they are not that maybe. Currently, the Arctic Council maybe does not provide a lot of opportunities for observers to influence maybe the Arctic policies. However, what happens in the Arctic actually influences the whole world, and
Right.
there is, for example, a direct connection between the climate in the Arctic and the Indian monsoons. So, and it's and the monsoons, it's the cornerstone of the food security in India. And if something happens to monsoons, then so it could be like a drought and all the other and famine and all these dreadful consequences. But now the countries that have an observer status, they don't have too many opportunities to influence. And also there are some indigenous people organizations that are also inside the Arctic Council as the observers. So that's how it looks like.
Right, right. I mean, it's interesting if you say those observer not nearby Arctic regions like India, Singapore, very far away from Arctics. But I don't know, the Arctic Council uh, allow in terms of observer, what is the condition? It means it's open to any country to become a member of observer, and any economic condition or any qualification, any capacity the observer should have.
Actually, any country could be an observer, but the country needs to submit an application to the into the Arctic Council, and then this application, this submission will be reviewed, and the country will be granted the status of observer, or it could not get the observer status from the first time. And actually, when it just started, and when the Asian countries tried to get this observer status, it was, I think it was the mid 2010s. There was a great, like the resistance from the countries, from the European countries, from the Arctic countries, because it was not clear at the time why the Asian countries need to be there, and whether they should be there actually. But it all changed when China and India, like the leading Asian countries, get their observer status in 2013. After that, some other Asian countries joined the observer group of the Arctic Council, and I think actually, I think that any country could be inside this observing group, but maybe not all the countries understand how Arctic, relates to them, and whether it's possible. Whether it's possible to gain something from being inside the Arctic Council. I think this is the reason that not all the countries are joining it. But actually, Arctic. I would like to highlight this once more, that the processes that happens in the Arctic, they have direct influence on what is happening all around the globe, even in the southern hemisphere. For example, I have already told about India and Indian monsoons that have direct connection between the Arctic climate and the monsoons. But also, as far as I know, to the depth of my understanding, the processes that are in the Arctic, they have the influence on what is happening, for example, offshore Brazil. So it's a very complex thing, and I think that that's why we need, the pull towards, or the push towards, the more involvement of Asian countries, the countries of the global south, into the Arctic matters, because their life actually depends on it.
It's relevant. It's relevant
It's relevant. It's totally relevant.
Because Asian people, Asian continent. If you see Siberia, half of eastern part of Russia, all are part of Asian region. We can say technically. So Siberia is definitely belong to the Arctic regions, and the people, Asian people in Siberia and all down southern part to Asia. All they are part of Asian region. So Asian is connected to Arctics, and Europe is connected to Arctics, and North America is connected to Arctic regions, but not Africa. So at least we can relate it. That is definitely related, connected.
We're definitely connected, and you see, Russia, I think, has a unique role because it's Eurasian country. It's half Europe and half Asia, and it's like a bridge between Europe and Asia. And I think that maybe this is like the big Russian idea, to be a connector, to be a communicator between the East and the West, because like inside our culture we have both Eastern peculiarities as well as Western characteristics. So, and yeah, but if we continue talking about Africa, I'm not sure that the processes that are happening in the Arctic, they do not influence the African region. Because if you talk about North Africa, for example, if you talk about North Africa, they quite feel, for example, in Egypt, also it's the problem of food security and droughts, and it also relates to the Arctic and relates to the Arctic air masses and what's happening from the climatic point of view, from the weather point of view. So I think actually it's all related. It's all related. But Asian countries, they of course they are like under the direct influence of Arctic climate and Arctic processes. Ice melting, for example, if you consider ice melting and the ice cap, the Arctic ice cap, which is actually which is shrinking. Actually, yeah, there could be some discussions of whether it's shrinking or not, or whether it's not shrinking. Of course, there are some, like cycles, like it shrinks, then it grows. But still, when it shrinks, it means that like the coastal states or the small states, island states, they are endangered because of the rising sea level, of course, and that's why yeah, that's important.
Yes, as you said, Russia is adjacent between Asia and Europe. It's big land adjacent connection between two continents, and also not just land, also the people are mixed, right? Russian are mixed. Western part of Russia mostly European, and eastern part of Russia mostly Asian descendants, something like this. So I mean, Russia is great adjacent connection between two continents, two regions, and I'm not sure uh, uh, most Russian they consider Siberia should have very much autonomous or sub-state, sub-nations, or if not full nations. Maybe most Russian authority may not agree for independence, but at least greater autonomous for them in Siberia. How did you feel? It may be also related to ice, Arctic region, Arctic development.
I think that I can't agree here, because in Russia there are actually autonomous regions for the indigenous people, like the Nenets people or Khamti or Mansi. They have their own regions, like Nenets autonomous region or Khanty-Mansi autonomous region, and so on and so forth. So I think that it's how to say, nowadays there are some takes in the Western media that Russia colonized those people, and it's the same as, for example, like British Empire. The Russian Empire was the same as British Empire, or any French Empire or Spanish Empire. But there are certain differences between the British Empire and how it behaved in the colonies, and how Russia grows its territory by going into the unknown regions. Actually, uh, there are not only like the northern people, but indigenous people, but a lot of people in the like the mainland, Russian mainland, like I don't know, Chuvash people or Udmurt people, Bashkir people, Tatar people. Actually, if you if you look in the Russian calendar, there are like certain dates like uh, 300 years of peaceful integration of some nation into the Russian Federation, Russian, well, not empire, but into Russia, it's usually called. And that's totally different because Russia not oppressed those people, but try to integrate, try to build like schools, roads, infrastructure, gave people some opportunities to grow in the not just um, in the settlement, but also in the on the empire level. And it's so the reason was not just to get all the resources and give nothing in return, but to cooperate and jointly develop this land, develop this country. So even when we talk about Alaska and Alaskan people, and there was a recent publication in Politico where they praised the demolition of the monument to the first Russian governor of Alaska, and how because as per article, the Russians committed a lot of crimes against these tribes, the indigenous tribes, but the reality was totally different because they just take like one point of view and they do not consider any other points of view because, for example, Russians um, there were a lot of like cross marriages in the Alaska, and because Russians not just go there, get some girlfriend and then return to Russia. No, they just stay there. They live there. They have like these mixed families, and the oppression was like it wasn't the oppression, but the Russian trade posts were attacked by the indigenous people, and they tried to defend, and also these attacks were usually inspired by the French. By the French officials who also from the Canadian part, and it's what I want to say that is that the modus operandi of Russian Empire and Russia, it was totally different from the British one, for example, or French one, or any other great empire, because uh, the Russian Empire, we didn't want just to take everything we need, get all the resources, I don't know, rob this land and make the inhabitants of this land unhappy, and like they do like they did in India. So a lot of negative processes that we see in India now, they are rooted in the British rule. So when this, like the wealthy elites and the poor general population, it all rooted in British rule. So, and I don't think that you can find uh, like poor indigenous people in Russia because they have a lot of financial support from government or special quotas for fishery, for hunting, and so on and so forth. And tax exclusions. I'm not maybe quite a specialist here, but to the depth of my understanding, there are so the state supports these indigenous people and tries to, to preserve their way of life. For example, if we consider oil and gas companies that are operating in the north, in the high north, uh, they also consider the rights of these people. For example, when they are laying pipelines for transporting oil or gas, when the pipeline crosses the land where there is a way of migration of deer, or where these indigenous people like moving. So these pipelines, they're usually laid like how to say, air-laid, so like above the ground, on a quite a height, just not in order not to interfere with the migration pathways. I don't know whether such things are done in Alaska now or in Canada, for example, to preserve the rights, um,
of local people.
preserving the way of life, traditional way of life. But also, there are a lot of initiatives. Like, for example, some Russian companies, oil and gas companies, they use the thing which is called green seismic. Seismic is a very important stage during the process of finding oil and gas, locating oil and gas. So this is seismic survey when you uh, to put it simply, it's just when you hit the ground really hard with something, and then you try to get the waves that are mirrored from the underground layers on the surface. So, and usually when it was, for example, Soviet times and earlier days, the forests were cut down to produce this. And nowadays we have some smaller devices that are much more eco-friendly and nature-friendly, and we do not need to cut down trees to get this seismic service, because we don't need huge cars, huge stations, seismic stations to do it. And all these just to not to save, to preserve the fragile Arctic environment. All of this. So I know that in the Western media there is, like, the image of Russia, which is a country where the oil pipelines spilling oil all the day long, and gas pipelines there all the day long there emitting methane, and that the Russian Arctic is very, how to say, polluted, and so on and so forth. But it's just the image, because the Western media, they're not interested in giving the picture of what is really happening in Russian Arctic. And when they, for example, ask for like for views from the indigenous people, they are asking indigenous people who are living, so they're like, so who are fleeing from Russia, who fled from Russia to Norway, to Germany, to any other place. So what can we learn from a representative of indigenous people who are now living not in the Russian Arctic but in some other place? Nothing. Just so, of course, if he fled from Russia or she fled from Russia, maybe they have something between them and the Russian position, but it's not like that everything is that bad.
Some loophole or some dissatisfaction or something,
Yes, some
some
issues,
missing, something missing.
yes.
So
Of course, there are some issues. Of course, there are some issues. But the thing is not that the issues exist or they not exist. There will be. So we live in a complex world, and of course, there will be some complex situations, and maybe the situations that are not just like good or bad, but that they are in some kind of, in some sort of, gray territory between good and bad. But I think that what's important is that how we react, how state react, how companies react, how business react, how academia react towards these problems and challenges. And if they just do not nothing, then it's a really, really, really a dreadful call. But
right,
if
right,
if they do something, it's like, so they try to improve, and that's a good point, I think.
right. So you try to saying that Russia are not like British colonization or Spanish colonization, French colonization. They those British and French are very destructive wherever they colonize in various countries that you want to say Russia are not like them. Russia usually, and I heard also some uh, observers say Russia consider mostly equality. They consider any country, any people equal, but it's mostly utopianism, this socialism concept, something like that. But disadvantage among many common people or business people in case of, most advantages in Russia always it's happened among elite regime, even though the state policy is you cannot, make a lot of profit like capitalism, but they have restricted any common people not to make a lot of money or not to make a lot of property, and not like rich people in US or British or French, any those capitalist country. But in Russia, those elite, very powerful, they are doing as much as they want. They make money. They own a lot of property in spite the state policy not let them do to the common people. But elite people are doing whatever they want. So it's a bit paradox. It's only good for elite. That idea, that policy. But in case of U.S. or uh, that British, or as you said, it's true. They are capitalists. They destructive, of course, very gap between rich people and poor people. And but that is the open policy. So they did that policy. That should be changed somehow, but that is not behind the sense, not behind the screen. But in Russia case, isn't that elite? Very few people has special opportunity and very highly opportunity. They can do whatever they want. It seems like that. You don't agree, or how?
I'm not sure. I see. I see. So it's also like the image of Russia that it's either oligarchs or like some elites that are like closed somehow from the general public. But uh, I'm not sure because from the inside the situation looks a little bit different. Of course, capitalism is international, and that's why if you take like the capitalist state, whether it's Russia or United States or Great Britain, um, in its core, it will look the same, and that there will be like the elites that are like very rich, who are leading like a luxurious life, and there will be a general public. But you see that it's like I guess it's in any other country you'll see the same. And as for like the elites that are doing whatever they want to do, uh, I'm not sure um, that the situation is too different in other countries. Of course, there are some points in your speech, and I think that are correct. That's really truthful. That the government processes, they're much more open to the general public in the Western countries. It's like that because how old is democracy in Western countries? Quite old, starting from the ancient Greece.
Right.
Yeah, but in Russia, is just like 30, 35, 35. Oh no, 30. I'm 40, then it means that it's something like, yeah, something like 35 years old. And of course, there are some,
After
uh,
1990s. I mean,
yes. So it's from 1991. Okay, from 1991, yes, that was the starting point of democracy, the liberal democracy, the Western democracy.
you said Russia is very short
Yeah.
time of democracy.
Yes, and of course some processes um, like the openness to general public of government processes. Yes, it's just formed, and let's don't forget that the Russian elites, they are not like middle-aged people; they are seniors, and they have mm, and they were raised in different culture because the people who are coming to the leading position in Russian elites now, they are much more open to public because they were formed in other conditions, and they are more, they are more open to public talks, to discussion with people, to interacting with people about age. Actually, these processes, these political processes, just a matter of time, I guess, because when the new people will come into the government, younger people will come into the well, for not when they come, because they're already there, but when their number will be bigger than now, I think the state will be more open. But still, you know, also the problem is not that some processes are hidden, because any country, I guess, any country has some covered operations and covered things that are done, because actually. um, there are no like good and bad countries, good and bad governments, because the power and government, they are like the same in any country, and they do what they need to do to preserve their country. Actually, whether it's United States or Russia or France or something, doesn't matter. But when we talk about some data or something, so in Russia, a lot of data is publicly available. Another thing that is not very, maybe, how to say, not very comfortable, convenient to use, because it could be like the data could be open, but it's in a spreadsheets of thousands and thousands and thousands of lines. So they're not maybe made convenient for public consumption. What I want to say. But yeah, of course, now during the considering the situation that Russia is going through now, some data is closed, of course. But in
Mm.
general,
There should be different data. There should be open for the public. And I mean, some are classified documents, some are disclassified documents. It should be there, but it should not be all information should be classified. Not it should not be all the time, because I mean, I don't know, as a scholar or academician, researcher like you have any chance to get any data or any information from your ministry office or your president office, or they do not allow you, or what? If there's a classified document, it can be limitation, but those are not classified documents. They should be able to get by any academician, even some classified for policy making or policy analyzing. you should even allow those researcher or academician
Mhm.
expert that should be allowed. So I don't know how much you can assess them.
Uh, to tell the truth, never in my academia career I needed any information from the presidential administration. I know, but still, I know that they have like a special website where you could write down their you could write down your request, and they will return to you with the answer, some sort of answer, some official answer. But I've never had a situation where I need some information from them. When we talk about the information on, for example, um, what is happening in this or that oil company or gas company, of course some information is closed due to, like, the business reasons, like the amount of reserves in this or that field, for example, or the production data, not the generalized numbers. Like this year Rosneft has produced several hundreds several hundred millions of tons of oil. But when you talk about, like, how much do you produce on, I don't know, Ruskaya oil field, they won't tell you. But the generalized numbers are readily available, and also. But what kind of data? If you talk about I don't know, related to the Arctic. If you talk about the Department of Defense and what the Ministry of Defense and what are they're doing there, so I think there are a lot of classified things there, and that's why so they produce into the public field only the information which could not harm their Arctic pursuits. Uh, what else? If you talk about like geological information, I guess is available. Like the geological information which is gathered by state, it is available. Like the climate data, weather data, it's also available for Russian research. It now it's unavailable for the Western researchers and for European researchers. So because now Russia does not share their information about the Arctic with the rest of the world, but inside Russia it's available. Uh, it's in relation to the Arctic. I'm thinking what else? If you talk about Northern Sea routes, the information about the vessels that are traveling here and there, and what are they carrying, and what's the tonnage of ship, it's totally available. Um, it's openly, because there are several administrations that several authorities that are running the Northern Sea route, and that's why they produce a lot of open data, a lot of open information. Uh, what else? I'm thinking just what
You
else about the Arctic
you
could
know
be like.
last time Nord Stream pipeline, right? Gas
Mhm.
pipeline explosion. You have any the final information how the explosion and who are the main behind the explosion?
I think the Russian position was formulated, and I guess that our Minister of the Foreign Affairs, Mr. Lavrov, has sounded it quite a lot of times, and the Kremlin spokesperson, Mr. Peskov, I think also he said something about this, because the Russian position is known, and the um, another thing is that the Russia was not a part of the international um, study group that was working on these explosions. And as you remember, the initial idea was that Russia blew these pipelines. That was like media escalated that it was Russians who blew these pipelines in order to cut possible gas traffic to Europe. But it was not Russia who actually who decided to stop gas traffic to Europe. It was Europe who decided to stop trafficking, to stop importing gas from Russia. It's back in 2014. So yeah, but I'm not sure whether the
Some
result of
are also, they guess it could be China, or some, I guess, U.S. military. Still
the Royal
no clear
yeah.
information.
It's a long list of suspects who could do who could do this, but I'm not sure. I don't know. I can't comment on this because I'm not inside this, inside the group that is conducting the survey.
Okay, so
And if I was inside this group, then I also would be unable to comment on this because, like, I think it's because the
you
actually
know,
the event itself is something out of this world because it was like I mean I think it's the first in history attack on that kind of infrastructural object because even if we go to Iran, Iraq war, there were attacks on like oil fields or oil refineries, but I think this is the first time when the transnational gas pipeline was attacked, actually, and I think this will be classified for many years. Like they just in the United States they just declassified Kennedy files that's like from 1963. So I think we have to wait another 50 years to be sure who was the author of this attack.
right. So, and by the way, I recently invited state visit to the Burmese military government. There's a state visit, and Russia and Burmese military regime is closely tied. And recently, earthquake in Burma, in the middle of the country, and it's huge damage. And the problem is the Burmese government, military government, has no capacity, no preventions, and no data. I mean, in terms of scientific data, in terms of geology data and satellite data. The military has no capacity, but the colleague putting your governments, Russia, as you said, Russia has a lot of geologists, experts, and a lot of space, satellite technology, and many expertise. But the Russia could not able to share those information, or could not help to avoid any big destructions, or to prevent as much as possible or something. You have any idea about geologist data related to maybe Russia expert or geologists, or those experts may have information about earthquake in Myanmar before earthquake or after earthquake? Is there any, you have any ideas?
I'm not aware of the Myanmar situation, but I know that Russian geological company, state company, Rosgeologia, they're conducting, I can't say a lot, but they're conducting some geological service in other regions of the world. Yeah, currently, if you talk about Asia, we are more focused on Vietnam and the White Tiger oil field. A lot of work is done there because they have like the Russian Vietnamese company, uh, which is operating the field. But
In South China Sea?
yeah, the White Tiger field, and I guess it's so. I guess that Rosgeologia could potentially, if there is a request from government of any country to provide any geological information or do some geological surveying, I guess they could do this because it's usually like the state company first comes there, and for example, if there is an interest in producing oil or gas, then um, some Russian companies also could be there. For example, if there is a mutual interest from the Myanmar side and Russian side. So I can't say more here because I'm just not aware of
Also,
whether
so you are not that
Rosgeology is working
much,
with me.
you are not
Hmm?
that much, you don't have much knowledge about Russia, Myanmar relations and how
Yeah,
we,
I'm not an expert in this field. I'm not an expert in this field,
right,
and
right,
I'm
because
just afraid to say
it is
something which is
also
just.
connected with, natural resources, as you say, gas and oil drilling in Asia, as you said, the one in Vietnam, probably cooperation with Burmese military government and Russian government. And Russia has planned to do some project in Myanmar too, So that's related. And also when you talk about drilling gas or oil, you also need geology information data,
Yes, of course, of course,
So
of
at
course.
least at
Mhm.
least oil and gas energy company, energy business in that sector, they should know geology information like earthquake. It can be happen earthquake or any disaster that should be advanced. They should at least know. I don't know how Russian uh, expertise or Russia technical or expertise in that geology or the disaster prevention technology. It's very good enough, or how do you see Russia capacity?
Speaking about the difficulties and probable to say disasters, of course, drilling, it's either the search drilling or production drilling, like either it's exploration or production. The drilling is always connected to a lot of potentially dangerous situations. But in order to evade, for example, gas kicks or oil kicks or some like major emergencies, like when we have like an open fountain of oil, for example, and which potentially could lead to a fire, explosion, and death of people, a lot of people, and like damaging the machinery. So there are certain protocols that all those who are working on an oil rig needs to know and needs to follow, and Nowadays, when we have these VR opportunities, virtual reality opportunities, it's easier to teach the great number of people who is related to drilling operations in order what to do. For example, when they have in order what to do in order to control the well, in order to stop it producing gas or oil. So it's oil kicks, gas kicks. So nowadays, I think that of course some situations happen, of course, because it always like the human factor, because you can't get into every person's head and put the right amount of knowledge inside it. But
Right.
it's not just Russia. It's the same situation we see like in the United States with this extensive drilling, or Arab countries with extensive drilling. So these situations happens because you know that when geologists come and they do the surveying and they say, okay, the layout of the subsoil or the underground is the following, and we see the chart like these layers, and these layers, and the pressure in this layer is like so many megapascals, and this so many, and so on and so forth. But it's just like their interpretation of these sound waves that they get from beneath, and we could not be sure what is inside, what is down below on 3,000 meters until we open it, until we open this layer with a well
Right.
while drilling. And of course, some extraordinary situations could happen, like the high pressure, high temperature layer, or for example, vice versa. It could be like a low pressure layer. It could be. But that's why the people on the drilling rig, on the oil derrick, because I don't know how it's, for example, it's in United States, because, for example, in Russia, you could not get a job on an oil rig without a proper qualification, proper education. It should be at least vocational school where you like
Right.
train be try to be like Derek Hand, or like, because and also apart from your qualification, you need to every 3 years you need to renew your knowledge of well control. It's just for the people not on the engineer position. But when we talk about engineers, they have to uh, they have even stricter, you know, requirements for them, because,
Right.
for example, I've graduated from Ufa State Petroleum Technological University, and actually drilling was my special during the university. And the guys, after graduating from bachelor, after getting bachelor's degree, they didn't get an engineering position on the oil derrick. They get like the position of a helping hand. They were not even drillers, not engineers, because in order to become a driller or an engineer, you need to get your master degree.
Yeah.
So so that's why, yeah, of course, the situations possible, but it's up to the training and qualification of the people on the derrick, on the oil rig. It's up to their qualification um, to properly evade the possibly
Right.
dangerous situation, or control it.
Right. So
Like this.
it's require a lot of knowledge, you know. It's a lot
Yeah.
of experiences. So coming back to the Arctics, you know, as we talk, Siberia is directly connected and belong to the Arctic region. Siberia, when you talk Siberia, it's also become Asian region, Asian continent, you know, because Russia, if you divide it Asian continent and European continent. Uh, Siberia is a lot of un, I mean uninhabited places, many places, empty territory, very few people, but a lot of huge territory. But compared to like Asia, Southern Asia, like India, largest population, 1.5 billion, and like Bangladesh, and immigrant to the Siberia to inhabit there in those in uninhabited area. How Russia will be respond in case of those immigrants?
Yeah. So the first thing, there is a certain difference between the Norwegian Arctic and Russian Arctic. Norwegian Arctic is actually um, is circled with Gulf Stream, and that's why it has practically no ice, and the weather there is much milder than if we talk about Siberia, because the northern part of Siberia is not so densely populated for a reason, because of the really low temperatures and the high wind speeds, and practically like some practical challenges like the polar night, uh, the permafrost, and so on and so forth. So it's really hard to establish a settlement there, and that's why during Tsarist times and during Soviet times, and uh, the idea of developing the Arctic was like, okay, we build a plant or we build some industrial facility there, and then let's build like a settlement. Let's build a power station, something like this. So it's like an oasis in a desert. So you build an oasis, and an Arctic desert all around it. Now this paradigm changes. So shifts, not changes, but shifts towards more complex development of the territory. For example, this happens with Yamal Peninsula and the Sabeta port, LNG port. So it was built out of nowhere, but it was not just a port. It's like the whole infrastructure around there, and it has a potential to grow, to improve somehow. As for the Asian nationals coming to Russia, I think that there are some relicants from India, from China, and so on and so forth. But they tend to live in where the most part of the Russian population lives. So they live either in the western part, actually, which is the most populated part of Russia. I guess more than half of Russian population lives in the western part, or they live in the Far East or in southern Siberia, cities like Krasnoyarsk, Novosibirsk, so which are close to Chinese border. And that's the point, because on at Murmansk Arctic Forum that was held recently, the Indian representatives, all of them said that we have like a human resource, so the resource that could be useful for your purpose, for your Arctic exploration activities, and so on and so forth. But for some reason, I don't know why actually. So the Russian cooperation with the Asian countries, it's usually like the economic cooperation. So we just do some investments, or we consider some energy deals, and so on and so forth. Actually, for business purposes, there is such entity as Arctic Zone of Russian Federation, where it's like a special economic zone where there are certain state incentives for those who want to do business in the Arctic. and the business which is not related to the mining processes or like oil extraction, gas extraction, but because when state companies go there, these are usually huge companies that are producing oil, gas, or coal or something, uh, and it's a really need for smaller businesses that could improve, like the life of an everyday people there. So and yes, and there are a lot of incentives for those who want to do business in the Russian Arctic. There is a special even special investment portal you could find online for those who want to invest in the Arctic. So the portal with all the required, all the needful information about how to start it, what state support there is, and what to do if you want to start business in the Arctic zone of Russian Federation. And I guess, as far as I remember, this portal is multi-language. So I believe that all
Language
nations,
problem.
all nationals are welcome. All nationals are welcomed to start some
So
smaller businesses in the Russian Arctic. But also the conditions, the climate conditions, and the weather conditions there are pretty stressful and harsh. There was a state program like the Far East hectare or something when any Russian person could get a hectare of land in the Far East. But in
no
order
one
to do some
vote.
small scale businesses, but not so many hectares were actually transferred uh, because the conditions there are pretty heavy, and you need to have some sort of personal traits of character to go to some uncharted territory and start something new. I think that's after the this idea of not just exchanging money between Russia and Asian countries, but also exchanging people and people expertise in the Arctic, in the Asia. So I think now this track will be like, I think will be more lively, I guess. But still, we need some interstate agreements on how to manage these, how to what are the rules, what are the limitations, because I think that
You
some
know,
people from the Russian Arctic would like to go somewhere like Goa in India and live there, and not in the Arctic, and exchange places
I
because the
see.
climate conditions are really different. But I
Right.
think, yeah, you stressed. I think that you stressed a really important point that cooperation in the Arctic should not only be considered as the money exchange, and like we invest, so we extract, we transport oil or gas. This is actually my whole idea that this paradigm, this export paradigm, that we
Right.
just need to extract more oil to export more, extract more gas to export more. It's a bit harmful, I guess, for in the long run for the as for the economy, so for the in the industrial development, because uh, we need to um, not just extract oil, but to develop the territory and
Right.
to like complex development. To
For habitat area.
yeah, yeah.
And and about Greenland, I think Russia did not involve in Greenland, right? Only Denmark,
No,
Norway,
no, no.
and
Russia is
US is based. It's all military. It's all military. So Russia
Russia
didn't
is not
involve in
involved, yes, in,
Greenland.
in the Greenland activities. Yeah, yeah, because it could not be involved actually, because Greenland is so it's like the same thing as for example, Denmark would be involved in some strategic projects, for example, in Novaya Zemlya, or any other territory that has a strong.
If U.S. take it over, what Russian will say? If Russian invasion is nothing.
Mhm. That's a really major question, because actually the American interest in Greenland is not. So some people think that it's just Trump's, extravaganza, that he wants to buy Greenland, but actually it's the interest of U.S. in Greenland could be traced back to 19th century. So back to 19th century, they wanted to buy this land. So after they bought Alaska from Russia, around the same time there were some plans to buy Greenland from Denmark, because this idea of Great United States. So was born at that time, and nowadays, which is just a reflection